существует
Okay,
вот этот вот...
we've got the concept of a cycle, and we are talking about a cycle when we have some beginning and end, these 2 points. So how do we, having various ways of perceiving the world, how do we form our own world? We've got the left eye and the right eye, the displacement of certain views, the displacement of these points. When going from one eye to the other, the image of the world forms. We just don't realise all that stuff. So when all those programs and cycles are being assigned, they take a shape of a certain system of filters. This picture shows this sort of multi-layer filters in the eyes of a person. I've deliberately taken this image, so here we have dual point of view, good and bad, going from one to the other. We constantly compare good and bad, which triggers the process of cycling, comparison that we project upon various planes of our perception system. Thus, our world structure is being observed by us through those 2 projectors, 2 sources, plus it goes through various prisms. So we end up getting an amazing multi-layer image like this. But of course, it doesn't appear to us like this immediately. So now we're getting closer to the question of the year 2012. What do we know so far? Cataclysms, Vanga's prophecies, some alien stuff, some Nostradamus-related talks. Is something good or is something bad waiting for us? What is that? Which forms of life? What are they talking about? What are soothsayers babbling about? What did the Maya create their calendar for? Who of those people mentioned are right and who are wrong? On the one hand, they are all right, but on the other hand, their prophecies don't sit well with each other. So how do we look at this, and which viewpoint are we to accept? That's the matter of thorough analysis that we have reached. I'd like to demonstrate some of the conceptual viewpoints concerning 2012. You see, the shutting of one program and the initiation of another looks pretty much like a change of political parties. One party replaces another. There's some kind of transition, disclosure, the new choice of the new program, new ideas, new goals. The goals get set and then caught up. For instance, if we look at the present day elections, what are the goals of all those parties? What do they suggest? Has any of them come up with any kind of landmark decision? No. As a matter of fact, they seem to have no goals whatsoever. People go out for a political rally with their miserable faces. Ask them what they are displeased with. Well, it's a kind of general dissatisfaction with the general state of affairs. So there's no need to hang out, getting involved in some deep conversations. Will somebody come up with something interesting? What is meant by interesting? What kind of novelty do the parties suggest exactly? But if there was some new political force that would step forward with some completely new idea, then the people might get interested. But as long as nobody suggests new things, there's no rage about their goals. Who do you follow? What are their objectives? I look at any opposition and see that they do not have an alternative program. What are their programs all about? They stick to the same old story. That's why people are not interested. But if we are talking about prophecies, if we are talking about why there are various systems of predictions, then we have it that various systems of predictions represent various parties, various models, interests that coexist in our society. Our society embraces lots of religions, lots of beliefs, i.e. various goals and ways of achieving spiritual enlightenment, as well as social and biological development. Those are the principal goals. When we aim for something, we immediately become interested in development. So if we want to figure out what is going on, I would start by suggesting that there are planets that serve as testing areas for some basic experiments. These planets are inhabited by individuals that would like to take part in those experiments. We can use a game as an example. Here we have a group of volleyballers who would like to play volleyball. So they get a ball and toss it over the net according to some set of rules. But if you give them 11 more balls so that each of the players has his own, will the game continue? No, this makes no sense. I mean, a volleyballer was there to play volleyball, not hockey or figure skating, because he was looking for that very experience. It's interesting for him. It's something he wants to study. So, there is some kind of intelligence that forms within the volleyball team so that this team may experiment with the ball. And if we bring this simple example to the level of civilization models, for example, how will the society of Earth develop over 5,000 years? Can we imagine this? Yes, we can. So what kind of awareness is going to manifest itself? Now imagine you are that intelligent link that has made the decision to develop all its layers within, say, 5,000 years. But these 5,000 years, where are they going? Which layer should they stick to? The informational or the corporal one? Well, it's a tough question, because 5,000 years for Earth and 5,000 light years are different things. I mean, are earthly impulses and light impulses different? Absolutely. So, if we are talking about some kind of material state that is going to develop in the course of 5,000 years, in this case, let's look at the planet Earth. We want to see how a multi-aspect intelligence would assign its many objectives for those 5,000 years. Of course, this information is very difficult to process, but it is possible. So there forms a corridor of tasks, and those intelligent essences that would like to get from the experience from all of the layers in the period of 5,000 years, those are who the flow starts to form for. Now, when we are talking about how Earth appeared, there's a number of informational sources. For example, if we look at Boryev's book called The Secret Source of Yoga Revealed, where he discusses Hyperborean, some hypotheses say that Earth never existed. For example, first there existed certain informational forms, and they condensed into some kind of cosmic mists. These mists, of course, had no sex differences or dualities. They just moved around, merged with each other, thus creating some sort of dense matter. This matter began to somehow gemate and propagate, thereby planets appeared. So here you have a sort of evolutionary cycle. If we consider a number of information sources dedicated to the conception, there emerges an image that some, conditionally speaking, flash of light repeatedly reflected from its various constituents, let's put it this way, which made it condense into certain forms. This leads to the appearance of planet Earth at some frequency level. Then within the Earth itself, there appears various frequency spectrums in the shapes of substances like stones, trees, animals, and people. Those are some kind of micro-worlds that form this way. First, people were agamous creatures, and according to those sources, they segregated away from each other. Then what was the selling point of Earth? The thing is, the Earth vibration allows various metals such as gold to form. Other civilizations use this for their own purposes. It reminds me of the movie Avatar. But there we see people fly to a different planet for some substance that had a fabulous price on Earth. So I think it's quite possible to imagine that some other civilizations mine earthly gold to use its vibration on some other planets. Why not? This may be very much the case. Then the imagination of certain masters, poets, songwriters, science fiction writers, esoterics, philosophers described those forms of intelligence that took certain shapes. So we assume that the dual worlds are used for creating some sort of playground. Various minds come and live there for thousands of years, creating certain forms of interactions, working with their bodies, shapes, purposes and goals for multi-aspect development. The completion of all those processes takes the shape of certain cycles. So we want to do this and that, and we start a cycle. It starts its revolution, various creatures, animals, people, etc. get involved. They interact and thereby create those images. As for me, this point of view has all rights to exist, doesn't it? We can see that there exists a huge amount of cycles that conduct the development of various systems. Then, if we look at our planet, we can also see that it is surrounded by myriad programs, various forms, let's call them alien, that bring their informational ways to Earth. Look at earthly people. We are all different. There are different races, yellow, black, white, grey. Each have their own tasks, each have its own religion. How many religions do we have? Well, we have 4 main religions. Heathens. Who's their god? The sun. And who has darkness? The moon for God. The Muslims, Islam. So we have the symbol of the sun and the symbol of the moon. Who's in charge of Islam? Allah, of course. Christianity is a cross. And who's on the cross? A person on the cross, of course. But we can present him in several different ways, e.g. as a martyr or as a harmonious individual. Because if we look at Leonardo's canon, we'll see that it's a sort of cruciform as well. Basically, a cross means symmetry. But in Christianity, this has a somewhat darker meaning. The martyr who suffers. And on the opposite side of the pole, there is Buddhism, with its happy and cheerful Buddha. So we see cheerfulness, suffering, the sun, and the moon. Those are the 4 main sectors, 4 filters that are being put on the glass and that start to create certain vibrations. For example, the glass's filtration sets various programs, and all those 4 concepts can exist perfectly well together on Earth, each having its own tasks and ways of achieving goals. Africa has its own tasks, as well as Asia, as well as Russia. Well, they don't intersect. Actually, they can't intersect at all. The Hindu can never become the European, and the European can never become the Hindu. It's impossible. Those are different frequencies, different spectrums where life forms. So, when we are talking about the experiments being conducted, they are being introduced by various structures, and the scale of those is far beyond our imagination, that launch various development programs. Therefore, alien ships pay recurring visits on Earth with a frequency of 1 cycle and introduce various development models into our earthly market. Once the old models are finished, the alien flea market crops up. They arrive on their spaceships, send their ambassadors. All sorts of dissidents, channelers who must suggest to Earth people or any wise creatures to play a game. This is not a spontaneous market. It's totally thought out. When these programs come to an end, They instruct Earthmen that they can discover and play with other toys. And all those toys are picked by the teams and take root on Earth. And such cult books like the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, the Talmud, all those are sets of rules in a game. So a filter is initiated, and there immediately appears a flow that brings in the rules that serve as the model. What kind of model? The model of our worldly outlook. Those models actually explain the way the world looks like. Those creatures that want to forget how it works and want to discover it from a new perspective, to experience new energies and emotions. Those creatures accept this model and start to deeply believe in it. As soon as the flow of faith inside takes the shape of a core, this becomes a channel that conducts creative energy. For example, we operate as simple amplifiers. We spin the flows that are essential for us. You shouldn't be afraid to give them away. He that giveth shall not lack, and that's fair. So that's the image of developing such channels that we use to constantly conduct energy. In return, we get the ability to feel happiness. It makes me think of a Soviet movie, Kindzadza, where by the end of the movie there is a scene. Hey Patsaks, why are you singing in the cage and aren't enjoying yourselves? Come on now, enjoy yourself. The director did a great job in showing how we put on constructors and cages and use ignorance to shield ourselves from the knowledge. How we use ignorance to summon creativity and energy. And this creativity, this energy, is the food of the universe. As Rudolf Steiner smartly put it, creativity is the food of spiritual cosmos. Therefore, when various models with their various development cycles appear on Earth and put their patterns together, those who are ready to play with the toys immediately show up. And we are not an exception. And when we are talking about what kind of life forms exist on Earth, we mean various forms of such and such reflected experiments that we use. There may appear an awful lot of life forms. The same goes for Pleiades. And when we start depicting the Pleiades, Sirius, the civilization of mad dogs, Lemuria and so forth, those are all memories of models that are undue these days. We've created those civilizations in our world outlook in order to play things we used to play. And each one of us played his own game. But in 2012, the game is over for those for whom it is supposed to end. That's exactly what happened to me. Therefore I can shut the experience of previous states, as I don't need them anymore. How do you tell whether a program is over? Whether you are in the program or the cycle is done? The audience asks, strong inner desire? Roman replies, not quite so. Desire means movement. When you have a desire to do something, that means you are willing to act. Whereas the end of a program implies absence of such desire. The audience asks, boredom, depression? Roman replies, that's closer. If you mean depression as an emotion, indifference suits better. But I mean some kind of blissful unconcern where you are totally calm and you are free from emotions, either positive or negative. You are blissful about what happens around you. If there's something, some event. Sometimes spouses decide to divorce. They go like, we're getting divorced, but things aren't going to go smoothly. The decision is already made and the perspective is clear. Nevertheless, something is going wrong. If the people are still having single grudges against each other, one last emotional spark that means they aren't done with the program. Therefore, the act of divorce can't happen on the program level. They may, as it usually happens, get a new partner. It seems that they've broken up, But what happens next is that they are seeking for a similar person, the one with similar traits and the same grudge to have against. I've chosen the divorce as an instance because this topic is pretty clear. Sometimes we come together, sometimes we fall apart. You know, that's just how we roll. So as far as programs go, you have to know one thing. If you have a complaint, the program lives on. No complaint, and it's done. Do you, for instance, care that a red train has just come to the Kropotkinskaya metro station? The audience replies, "That's cool." Roman continues, "That's some kind of bundle, but if you don't care, if it's not a big deal for you, you have no train-related programs. But if you would be a train driver who hadn't got his bonus or had just been fired, you might say, 'Let that train and that station burn down,' or something along those lines. Well, what's that? It's a grudge, an emotion. And as soon as we come close to the end of those programs, and if we consider human life as a chain of ideas. Now, imagine that we, for example, develop our own biotechnical robot from angel-like state to the robot we possess right now. Imagine this long evolution, this being a program. So for this robot to be put together, we need to have some sort of worldly outlook, as it's our world outlook that suggests us goals. We live the way our world looks like. Therefore, all of this is a kind of rational, intriguing game. Some states of intelligence show us certain world outlook images. We stick to their novelty and start to get creative within those, and thus we create new forms. Once this program is over, we get indifferent. Once you become indifferent to it, this always is a signal that you are ready for new programs. If we are talking to, say, deeply religious people, what are we going to discuss with them? Anything but religion. Any attempt to persuade them that God doesn't exist, or he can turn into the devil or back again, before you can say, "Jack Robinson," it's going to stir up aggression. But why does this happen? Because the person wants to go the full circle of this religious experience. This program is running for him at the moment. Will he ever care about Pleiades and patterns going around and creating new religions? Fat chance. The only thing the one who's trying to infringe on their faith is likely to get is a slap in the face or even attempt on their life. Why? Because the source of evil has to be silenced. And what is evil? Evil is nothing more than you trying to keep others from fulfilling their free choice to pass such and such a program. That's why revolutionaries have always been killed, and this is the right thing to do. What is the point of a revolution? You see, revolutionaries differ. There are instigators who will give a short tug on a moustache and immediately run away, and there are fanatics. Among the enlightened, various confessions adepts, there are no revolutionaries. There is a very distinct vision of the world, synchronicity of these programs. The principal rule is inviolability of the freedom of choice. You may awaken a sleeper only when it's time for him to take over the watch. That's the sailor's law. And the law of universe prohibits awakening a sleeper under any circumstance. If his free choice is to sleep, then let him do his thing. Let's take a family. The goals have been set, but one person wants to go on developing. He strives for a different form of life. But the other person hampers him by not evolving. The situation triggers a terrible conflict, and the conflict will be resolved only when one of them becomes completely indifferent. And how about the preventer? Well, they may face serious complications that can go as far as a lethal outcome. Impeding can therefore cause trouble. When we're talking about these forms of life that we make up ourselves, we believe in something. We process various energy flows, and on various planes of the matter's existence, they transform into certain essential builders and personal attitudes. Someone finds importance in mining gold or rummaging around in dirt, or raking money, or pushing science forward, or building some kind of model, each to his own, while staying within the vision, of course. Therefore, we invite higher minds so that they give us faith in certain world order. If you ask the Christian man, "What do your churches look like?" they say that it looks like a spaceship. Why so? One day, people came and they gave them to us, and our biorobots, and these were our gods. Well, wait a second. And what do you do about that? Well, nothing. So that's how they imagine that. Okay, well, let it be. It makes no difference who has come, if anyone has, or maybe I've just made it up, so long as it's interesting. So now, by the year 2012, these models are coming to an end. Actually, they are supposed to. Anyway, how does the very understanding of world outlook form? Here I'll give you an example using a projector light, the first image on the left. Imagine the light that is darkened by nothing. It's a source of pure light, pure love, pure divinity, etc. It sounds pretty much like a Reiki. I'm giving you pure source of energy, as every Reiki will say. I beg your pardon, but if it has already passed through you, how is it supposed to be pure? So that's how the whole concept of Reiki falls apart. If you possess a pure source of energy, it means that you get depersonalized, whereas Reiki is a personal attitude. The audience asks, Reikis only claim to pass it. Well, I see that. We are only passing, but what are we passing and where? Fairing or what? Okay, I won't go deep into Reiki right now. We aren't disputing religion or Reiki. Now we're talking about different physics.